Gunmen in northern Kaduna State have released more than 130 Nigerian school pupils and staff unharmed after they were kidnapped earlier this month. They are now set to receive psychological support before being released to their families. The authorities claim that the release came just days before the ransom deadline. Let's take a look.
After more than 2 weeks held as hostages, these Nigerian school children are now free. They were brought to a local government building in the northwestern Kaduna State on the day after being rescued by the army in neighbouring Zamfara. That was also just days before a deadline to pay a 1 billion naira or $690,000 ransom for their release. 137 hostages had been freed, a military spokesperson said, on 76 of them female and 61 male. The army also said one school staff member had died in captivity. School officials and residents had said 287 students were abducted by gunmen in the town of Kuriga. It was the first mass school abduction in Nigeria since 2021. On Sunday, Kaduna Governor Uba Sani put the number kidnapped at over 200. Given the discrepancy in numbers, it was not clear if any hostages remained captured. Some Kuriga elders said Sani had told them all hostages had been freed. Abductions at Nigerian schools were first carried out by jihadist group Boko Haram. However, they have since been adopted by criminal gangs without ideological affiliation, seeking ransoms. Information Minister Mohammed Idris told a press briefing in Abuja that no ransom was paid to secure the students' release. However, one security source, who asked not to be named, said he saw 14 black bags which he assumed contained ransom money being delivered to the Dansadao enclave in Zamfara State.
Let's now get a reaction from a human rights activist, Hajiya Hamsatu Allamin. Hajiya, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, in your opinion, what are the key factors that contribute to these continued abductions of school children in Nigeria?
Well, this abduction, although the Chibok girls is what the world knew because it made headlines, but abduction of particularly women and children started in this part of the country as far back as 2012 to 2013, long before abduction of Chibok girls, where hundreds of girls along the street in occupied communities were abducted. But nobody talked about it. So I can attribute, in fact, the reason why is because I think maybe the low regard or low esteem or low value with which the human life is being held across Nigeria. Because, in fact, long time ago, over 3 years ago, we even called on the Nigerian government to declare, in fact, abduction of people a national emergency, particularly of women and girls. But now it has become, in fact, overall, where, in fact, school children, boys and girls, the women, and then even in my own side of the country, where even people do not even talk about it. So that I can say it really. In fact, even the extremists, sometimes when you talk with them, they will tell you that, Mama, your government does not value human lives, does not value human blood. Then this is the extremists that will tell you this. So you can imagine. In fact, recently there was a speculation of such mass abduction in an area around the Nigeria-Cameroon border, where it was speculated some people were abducted. When we reached out to stakeholders in that area, that in fact a highly placed person from that area was telling me, oh, they are just small children. You are talking as if they are big, they were adults. So you see, to him, honestly, children are nothing. So therefore, in fact, that is why, in fact, this abduction now became, I can say, a national emergency. So it's really unfortunate. And then the level of impunity is growing by the day. In fact, I can say impunity is becoming a norm people will abduct, and then whether ransom is paid or not, but it is a shame.
Now,
We are
Hajiya,
playing with human lives.
of course, I mean, you speak of the government, and I want us in a moment to speak about what role do they play. But with this particular incident, we do know, or it was rather reported, that 286 people, children and educators, were abducted, but only 130 had been released yesterday. Do we know who is responsible for this abduction?
Well, they said this, they were abducted in the north central part of the country. I am living in the northeastern part of Nigeria, where that is the epicenter of the Boko Haram insurgency. So, but in fact, as far back as 2016, I made one international press conference where I said the Boko Haram in northeastern Nigeria, the bandits and then the criminals or whatever, kidnappers around northwestern Nigeria and north central Nigeria, from what I used to hear from the extremists that I communicate with in my part of the country, honestly, they have a link. I can say they are almost all the same. So therefore, this is what is taking place. I said it long time ago. And now in fact, when the extremist group has been in fact busted in northeastern Nigeria, many of them have traveled to north central Nigeria, to northwestern Nigeria, and many who come from that axis also told us that they have been operating along that axis. And then other criminal gangs also have now taken impact because of the harsh economic situation, and then the downturn is biting on everybody. Many able-bodied young men who have nothing to do, in fact, have now resorted to join such band because abduction has now become a lucrative business. That is the easiest thing you can do. Go and then snatch a human being and then claim money, whether from government or from their relation. So therefore, in fact, whoever is responsible, whether it is Boko Haram, whether it is criminal or bandits or kidnappers, as they call them, they are all the same. And then somehow along the line, they are all interlinked. And then this operation mostly happens in northern Nigeria, but in fact, there are a lot of actors who come from the southern Nigeria and then link up with those people in northern Nigeria and then carry out this criminality. So it is really a complex situation. Only the government and the security agencies can tell us more, but then why we as human rights activists are just sensitizing people should in fact devise ways of protecting themselves, because nobody can protect you in the context we are now operating.
Speaking of that protection, sorry to come in there, Hajiya, I really want us to have more of this conversation with the little time that we have. How do you believe government should be preventing these abductions from happening? I mean, you spoke that there's very little consideration for human life when it comes to these abductions. How should they be preventing this from happening?
Well, protection can take several ways. In fact, this abduction is criminality. Whoever acts in a criminal way, I think there should be ways of means of sanctions, in fact, to bring whoever it is to book. In fact, when governments were very serious, in fact, when such crimes are committed and then the criminals are known, in fact, I think it is lack of the impunity that you feel, yes, you can do anything, money will be paid, and then in your hands, and then that is the end of it. Maybe because it is the poor man's children and others that are abducted, or the poor man's wives and daughters. That is why, in fact, no serious actions are taking place. So therefore, there should be sanctions. These are, in fact, crimes against humanity. It is criminality, and then the kind of trauma, psychological distress you are inflicting on whoever is kidnapped, and then the family of those people is untold for, particularly for those of us who relate with the local people in the field. So therefore, if a government should now decide to, in fact, even before the wide abduction of Chibok girls, and then now it has become, I said, a national emergency. Have you ever had even for the abduction of Chibok girls, a serious investigation ever taken place, or some people held responsible, and then those people are either prosecuted, investigated and prosecuted, and then maybe sanctioned. So therefore people feel, yes, it's just a normal thing.
So Ma'am Hajiya, you work...
Unless and until government takes measure to start, in fact, punishing perpetrators of this crime, and now it is spreading. It is getting out of hand.
You work very closely with a lot of these young girls that have been abducted. What have you seen being the impact when they come back from these abductions?
It was terrible. Initially, some of these people, when they come back from these abductions, even some of them were rejected even by their own families. The society stigmatizes them. In fact, everybody runs away from them. And I said to the extent that even their own families rejected them, until we started creating social network for them, and then going into the deeper society to really sensitize people to empathize, because nobody is above that in my part of the country, particularly when this thing started. Even the activists could have been abducted. So all of us could have been prone to being victims of such circumstances. So, but all the same, and then when they come, in most cases when they come, these girls come back with either pregnancies or with babies. And then both them and their babies, particularly in my part of the country, are being rejected utterly. So you can imagine a girl who has lost everything, no means of livelihood, no shelter, and then the society has rejected them, calling them names, bad blood or whatever, and then remnant of Boko Haram. It was terrible. But alhamdulillah, in fact, within this, for the last 2 or 3 years, things have started changing since we started direct intervention, where in fact we intervene with the girls to heal them of the trauma and the psychological distresses, and then started networking them internationally with some other survivors across the world to show them that really they are not alone. In fact, all over the world in conflict situations, these are the kind of things that happen. And then we go deeper into the society now. In fact, we now mobilize the stakeholders, and now we are even building capacities of stakeholders so that to really educate them, because there is nothing you can do. But the situation is really there, particularly in a religious society like mine. The babies these people come back with, they are considered illegitimate children. So therefore nobody wants to even associate with it. But then in the circumstances that we are working with, in my even small NGO, I have registered more than 4,000 of such girls, like the Chibok girls. And the Chibok girls that have been returned so far, we have discovered, in fact, about 5, they have come back with about 500 children so far. So you can see now what else will be the solution but to sensitize the society, to empathize, show empathy, that nobody is above this. And then we have to put heads together, in fact, to welcome them back, and then go in and then see how we can make individual one-on-one interventions, group interventions, so that some of these girls who went perhaps have been radicalized too. They have imbibed the extremist ideologies, but they also have become something else.
Right. Hajiya, thank you so much for your time. It's an absolute pleasure having you on, and we wish you all the best with the work that you do with these young girls that are being returned into the society. That was a human rights activist, Hajiya Hamsatu Allamin.